My girlfriend's family badmouthed me in their native language, so I learned it behind their back and destroyed them by speaking my mind in it, by destroying her daughter with perfect Turkish. Before my girlfriend Aisha first brought me to her family's Sunday breakfast, I was terrified of meeting them. She had told me dozens of stories about how traditional they were. One time, her cousin's boyfriend showed up to a holiday dinner without bringing anything, and her aunt still called him empty-handed Mehmet 5 years later. Another time, her friend came over wearing shorts above the knee, and her dad muttered shameless in Turkish under his breath. Luckily, her dad was now out of the picture, but I was still scared because I was a purebred American, and I knew it was a big dream of her family for all the daughters to marry a Turkish man. In the months leading up to meeting them, I spent 2 hours every day in a Turkish setting to learn the culture. Turkish restaurants, grocery stores, and even tea houses. So when the time came, I had practically formed a script in my head of how to act and speak. Aisha, of course, didn't know any of this. I kept it a secret because I didn't want her to think I was crazy. When the day came, I walked in carrying a huge box of fresh baklava from the best Turkish pastry shop, cologne for her brothers, and flowers for her mother. I kissed her mom, Fatma, on both cheeks, starting with the right, just like I'd learned. Removed shoes without being asked, placed them neatly by the door, and responded properly to everyone's greetings. I called her older sister Big Sister, and any older male relatives Big Brother. I knew things were going well when her younger sister Alif kept bringing me tea in those tiny tulip glasses, giggling about how respectful I was. And her mom didn't speak English, but it really seemed like she liked me too. She would smile every time I complimented the food, and complained about these modern kids as if I wasn't American. Now, you're probably wondering how I understood what she was saying. Well, I went behind Aisha's back. While studying Turkish culture, I started taking Turkish lessons. I didn't want to say anything about it because I wanted to surprise her at our engagement. So up until this point, it had been around 6 months of lessons, and I could hear how well Fatma was speaking of me to Aisha's two sisters. Aisha was practically glowing with pride. I had no idea that it was the calm before the storm, because there was just one person who made it abundantly clear that I was an unwanted guest, and that was her older sister, Zeynep. Constantly made snide remarks in English about how I was watering down their bloodline, made jokes about how I was a good warm-up for her future Turkish husband, but I was convinced that I would win her over eventually, and just shrugged it off. But the next time I was over, things had completely changed. When me and Aisha showed up at the door, her mom barely acknowledged me and asked Aisha in Turkish, "Why is the foreigner still around?" Aisha looked just as confused as me, but just rolled her eyes before walking in. We sat down for dinner, and Fatma served fresh meatballs and rice to everyone. Meanwhile, she handed me a plate of completely raw ground meat with raw onions. There was so much that the juice started dripping all over me. And just before I could ask for a napkin, Fatma, Mil, turned to Aisha and said, this was always Emre's favorite. That's when everything made sense. Emre was her first love from university, and he was Turkish. Her family hadn't accepted me. So there I was, pretending to eat raw meat and trying to make polite small talk, when Zeynep, the older sister, turned to my future mother-in-law and said in Turkish, her boyfriend just told me that doner kebab is better in Germany. I froze. My girlfriend opened her mouth to speak, but I lightly pinched her arm under the table because I had to test the waters. This food is really delicious, I said in English, with a completely straight face. He says Turkish food gives him diarrhea, Zeynep translated. Fatma's face went completely red, and she started muttering prayers under her breath. The room was silent. I couldn't even hide my smile. Thank you for having me in your beautiful home, I said. He said your house smells like a kebab shop and needs renovation, Zeynep lied. My girlfriend was shaking with anger. Fatma was getting ready to throw me out. That's when I looked directly at Fatma and said in perfect Turkish, Mother Fatma, I've been learning Turkish for 6 months to properly ask for Aisha's hand. Every word your daughter translated was a lie. Allah is my witness. My girlfriend nearly spit out her yogurt drink. Even her younger sister, the angel of the family, burst out laughing. Zeynep tried to recover, stammering excuses, but it was over. I had won. Fatma grabbed the plate of raw meat and dumped it over her daughter's head. What kind of daughter are you? Shameless, she yelled, before getting up to hug me and apologize, calling me my son for the first time. On the drive home, I almost crashed, because me and Aisha couldn't stop laughing about how crazy the whole thing had been. And I didn't know it at the time, but her sister was still upset about Aisha marrying a foreigner, and it wasn't long before she turned my entire life upside down. 2 weeks after the raw meat incident, things seemed to have calmed down at Aisha's family home. Fatma had started treating me like her own son, always packing extra food for me to take home, and texting Aisha to make sure I was eating properly. Even the cousins who used to eye me suspiciously now greeted me warmly at family gatherings, but Zeynep had gone eerily quiet, avoiding eye contact and leaving rooms whenever I entered. I should have known she was planning something. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday afternoon. Aisha called me crying, barely able to form coherent sentences. I rushed to her apartment and found her curled up on the couch, her laptop open beside her. She had received messages on Instagram from someone claiming to be my ex-girlfriend, complete with old photos of me and detailed stories about our supposed ongoing affair. How could you do this to me? Aisha sobbed, showing me screenshots of conversations I had never had, meetings I had never attended, promises I had never made. I sat down beside her, my hands shaking as I read through the messages. The person knew details about my life, my schedule, even the restaurant where Aisha and I had our first date, but something felt off. The writing style was too formal, too calculated, like someone trying to sound American but missing the mark. Aisha, I swear on my mother's life, this isn't real, I said, pulling her close. Let me call my friend Alex from IT. He can help us figure out where these messages are coming from. Alex arrived within an hour, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. He worked at a tech startup downtown and had helped me set up security cameras at my apartment last year. As he clicked through the fake profile, examining metadata and running traces, Aisha paced the living room, occasionally shooting me wounded looks. Got it, Alex announced after what felt like hours. The IP address traces back to a residential location. Want me to pull up the exact address? When the address appeared on screen, Aisha gasped. It was Zeynep's apartment building. We drove there immediately, Aisha's knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. We found Zeynep in her living room, her laptop still warm on the coffee table, the fake Instagram account still logged in. How dare you? Aisha screamed at her sister in Turkish. Creating fake profiles? Trying to destroy my relationship? Zeynep didn't even try to deny it. She crossed her arms and lifted her chin defiantly. I'm trying to protect you from making the biggest mistake of your life. He's not one of us, Aisha. He'll never understand our culture, our values. The confrontation ended with Aisha dragging me out before she did something she'd regret, but Zeynep wasn't done. Not even close. A week later, at a family gathering for Alif's birthday, I was helping set the table when Zeynep stood up dramatically, holding her phone high. I have something everyone needs to hear, she announced in Turkish, assuming I wouldn't understand. I recorded the American practicing our language. Listen to how he mocks us. The recording that played through her phone speaker made my blood run cold. It was definitely my voice, but chopped and edited to make innocent practice sentences sound like cruel mockery. Where I had actually said, I'm still learning, please be patient, the edited version made it sound like Turkish is such a stupid language. The room erupted. Cousins started yelling, aunts shook their heads in disgust, and Fatma looked at me with tears in her eyes. I stood frozen, unable to defend myself when the doorbell rang. Aisha ran to answer it and returned with my Turkish teacher, Mrs. Demir, whom she had secretly invited as a surprise to show her family how dedicated I was to learning their language. Mrs. Demir took one look at the chaos and demanded to hear the recording. This is edited, she declared after listening carefully. I have recordings of all my students' lessons for progress tracking. This young man has never said anything disrespectful. In fact, he's one of my most dedicated students. She pulled out her tablet and played the original recordings, proving how Zeynep had manipulated the audio. The room fell silent. Zeynep's face flushed red as family members members turned to stare at her. Fatma walked over and slapped her daughter across the face. "Shame on you," she hissed, trying to frame an innocent person in my home. But Zainab's campaign continued. The following month, she convinced several elderly relatives that I was after inheritance money. She showed them fabricated bank statements suggesting I had massive gambling debts and was planning to drain Aisha's savings. The documents looked professional, complete with bank logos and transaction histories. This time, I came prepared. At the next family dinner, I brought my financial advisor, Mr. Mac Victoria, a silver-haired man who had been managing my investments since I graduated college. He calmly laid out my actual financial statements, showing my steady job, modest savings, and clean credit history. "I've known this young man for 5 years," Mr. Mac Victoria told the gathered relatives. "He's one of the most financially responsible clients I have. These documents your daughter showed you are completely fabricated." The elderly aunts who had been giving me cold looks all evening suddenly became apologetic, pressing more food onto my plate and patting my shoulder. Zainab slipped out of the room, but I knew she wasn't finished. Her next attempt was more brazen. During a family outing to a Turkish festival, she suddenly discovered Turkish nationalist pamphlets in my car, complete with anti-American slogans and extremist rhetoric. She made sure to find them in front of everyone, gasping dramatically as she pulled them from under my passenger seat. "Look what he's been hiding," she cried out in Turkish. "He's trying to infiltrate our community." Before I could respond, Elif stepped forward. The quiet, sweet younger sister who usually stayed out of family drama held up her phone. "I have a video," she said simply. "I saw Zainab putting those papers in his car 20 minutes ago." She played the video for everyone to see. Clear as day, there was Zainab glancing around nervously before opening my unlocked car and shoving the pamphlets under the seat. The family members who had gathered around stepped back from Zainab in disgust. "I was just testing him," Zainab stammered, but no one was listening anymore. The escalation reached a terrifying peak 3 weeks later. I woke up to police officers at my door, responding to a break-in report at Zainab's apartment. She had filed a complaint claiming I had broken in and threatened her, even showing them a cut on her hand as evidence of a struggle. "Sir, we need you to come with us for questioning," one officer said. My heart pounded as I grabbed my phone. "Officer, I understand, but can I show you something first? I was at a cooking class last night, a Turkish cooking class with 20 witnesses. I pulled up the photos on my phone. There I was, wearing an apron covered in flour, standing next to Fatma as she taught me to make her special borek recipe. The timestamp showed I had been there from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., exactly when Zainab claimed the break-in occurred. The cooking school confirmed my attendance, and several other students vouched for my presence. The officers exchanged glances. "We'll need to have a word with Miss Zainab," one of them said. Later, I learned that Zainab had injured her own hand with a kitchen knife to make her story believable. The police found no evidence of forced entry, no fingerprints, nothing to support her claims. She received a warning about filing false reports. The final confrontation came at Aisha's birthday party. The entire extended family had gathered at Fatma's house, the tables overflowing with traditional dishes. I had spent days preparing my speech in Turkish, ready to formally ask for Aisha's hand in marriage in front of everyone. I noticed Zainab hovering near the food table, shooting me dark looks. When Fatma called everyone to eat, I reached for the plate she handed me, a beautiful arrangement of lamb kebab and rice. But Elif suddenly appeared at my elbow. "Take mine instead," she whispered urgently. "Trust me." I switched plates with her just as Zainab turned to watch. Elif took a large bite of what should have been my food and immediately started choking. Her face turned red as she gasped for water, tears streaming down her cheeks. The food had been loaded with enough salt and hot pepper to make it inedible. "What's wrong with the food?" Fatma cried, rushing over. Elif, still coughing, pointed at Zainab. "She put extra salt and pepper on that plate. I saw her. It was meant for him." She gestured at me. The room went deadly quiet. Zainab stood frozen, her face pale. That's when I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small notebook. "I've been documenting everything," I said in clear Turkish, making sure everyone could hear. "Every lie, every scheme, every attempt to break up my relationship with Aisha. Elif has been helping me, and so have some of the cousins who are tired of watching Zainab's behavior." I handed the notebook to Fatma. Inside were dates, times, screenshots, and witness statements. Everything from the fake Instagram profile to the false police report was meticulously documented. Several cousins stepped forward to confirm they had seen Zainab's various schemes and were willing to testify to her behavior. Fatma's hands shook as she read through the evidence. When she looked up at Zainab, her face was a mask of fury and disappointment. "You have dishonored our family," Fatma said, her voice deadly quiet. "You have lied, schemed, and tried to harm a guest in my home. Worse, you have tried to destroy your own sister's happiness." "But Mama, he's not Turkish," Zainab protested desperately. "I was trying to protect our family. The only person our family needs protection from is you," Fatma replied. "You are no longer welcome at family gatherings until you apologize to both your sister and her boyfriend, and that apology better be sincere." Zainab looked around the room for support, but found only disappointed faces. Even the relatives who had initially been skeptical of me now looked at her with disgust. She grabbed her purse and fled, tears streaming down her face. The party continued without her, though the mood was subdued. I gave my speech asking for Aisha's hand, and Fatma tearfully gave her blessing. The engagement was official. Months passed without word from Zainab. She missed Eid celebrations, family birthdays, and weekend gatherings. Fatma held firm to her banishment, despite Aisha's occasional attempts to soften her mother's stance. Finally, at our engagement party 6 months later, Zainab appeared at the door. She looked different, humbled, her usual prideful posture replaced with genuine remorse. She approached our table where Aisha and I sat with Fatma and Elif. "I need to say something," she began in Turkish, then switched to English so I could understand every word. "I was wrong, completely, terribly wrong. I let my prejudice and jealousy cloud my judgment. I was jealous that my younger sister found love before me, real love, and I couldn't accept that it was with someone outside our culture." She turned to me directly. "You've shown more respect for our family and traditions than some Turkish men I know. You learned our language, our customs, our food. You've made my sister happy in a way I've never seen before. I'm sorry for everything I put you through." The room was silent, everyone waiting for my response. I stood up and replied in fluent Turkish, my accent much improved from months of practice. "Zainab, I accept your apology. Family is everything, and you're Aisha's family, which means you're my family too. Let's start fresh." Zainab's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since I'd met her, she smiled at me genuinely. Then she did something that shocked everyone. She walked to the tea station, prepared a glass of Turkish tea exactly the way I liked it. Not too sweet, not too strong, and brought it to me. "Welcome to the family," she said, serving me properly for the first time. The room erupted in applause. Fatma wiped tears from her eyes. Aisha squeezed my hand under the table, and even Elif, our quiet ally through everything, smiled broadly. As I sipped the tea Zainab had served me, I realized that sometimes the hardest battles aren't won through force, but through patience, truth, and the slow building of trust. Looking around at the faces of my future family, all finally united in celebration, I knew that every challenge had been worth it. The path to acceptance hadn't been easy, but it had led me here, to this moment, surrounded by the people who would become my family, not by blood, but by choice. The engagement party celebration continued late into the night, with relatives dancing and singing traditional songs. I thought we had finally reached peace, but as Aisha and I were helping clean up, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message contained a single photo that made my stomach drop. It was a picture of me from college, at a party where I'd had too much to drink, looking disheveled and holding a beer bottle. The caption read, "Your family should know who you really are." I deleted the message immediately, telling myself it was nothing. But over the next few days, more photos appeared. Pictures from spring break trips, college parties, moments I barely remembered. Each one carefully selected to make me look irresponsible, reckless, unsuitable for a traditional Turkish family. The sender always used different numbers, making them impossible to block effectively. Aisha noticed my increasing anxiety. During dinner at her favorite Turkish restaurant, she reached across the table and took my hand. What's wrong? You've been checking your phone constantly. I wanted to tell her, but something held me back. After everything we'd been through with Zeynep, I didn't want to bring more drama into our lives. Just work stuff, I lied, forcing a smile. The photos escalated. Someone had edited them to make them look worse than they were. A picture where I'd been holding a glass of water now showed a whiskey bottle. A photo with female classmates from a study group was cropped to look intimate. Whoever was doing this had skill with photo manipulation. 3 weeks after the engagement party, the photos reached Fatma. She called Aisha in tears, demanding an explanation for the shameful images someone had slipped under her door. The photos came with typed notes in Turkish, describing wild parties, inappropriate relationships, and irresponsible behavior. Aisha drove us to her mother's house immediately. Fatma sat in her living room, the photos spread across her coffee table, her face a mixture of disappointment and confusion. The cousins had gathered, whispering among themselves. Even Elif looked troubled. Explain these, Fatma said coldly, gesturing at the photos. I picked them up one by one, my hands trembling. Mother Fatma, these are from my college years, but they've been edited. This one, I was at a study group, not a party. This one, that's not alcohol. It was water. Someone is manipulating these images. Who would do such a thing? One of the aunts asked. Before I could answer, Zeynep walked in. She looked at the photos and gasped. I had nothing to do with this, she said immediately. I gave my word. I would never. For once, I believed her. The look of genuine shock on her face couldn't be faked. But if not Zeynep, then who? The answer came from an unexpected source. Aisha's cousin Murat, who worked in cybersecurity, offered to help trace the source of the photos. He spent hours analyzing the metadata, tracking email trails, and examining the edited images. What he found shocked everyone. The photos were sent from an email account registered to someone named Emre Yilmaz, Murat announced at the next family gathering. The room went silent. Emre, Aisha's ex-boyfriend from university. The one whose favorite food had been raw meat with onions. The one her family had hoped she would marry. That's impossible, Aisha said, her voice shaking. Emre moved to Germany years ago. We haven't spoken since we broke up, but Murat had more evidence. He's been back in the country for 6 months. And look at this. He showed us social media posts from Emre's accounts, carefully hidden from Aisha, but visible to others. Posts about reclaiming what was stolen and fixing past mistakes. The family erupted in discussion. Some relatives thought we should confront Emre directly. Others wanted to involve the authorities. Fatma sat quietly, processing this information about the man she had once considered a perfect son-in-law. I made a decision. Let me handle this, I said in Turkish. This is between me and him. Aisha grabbed my arm. Number, we handle this together. We tracked down Emre's workplace through Murat's research. He was working at an import-export company downtown, specializing in Turkish goods. When we arrived at his office, the receptionist informed us he was in a meeting. We waited. When Emre finally emerged, he stopped dead upon seeing us. He looked older. His university good looks faded into something harder. His eyes moved from Aisha to me, and his expression darkened. We need to talk, Aisha said firmly. Emre led us to a small conference room. He sat across from us, his posture defensive. I heard you got engaged, he said in Turkish, not looking at me. Congratulations. Cut the act, Aisha snapped. We know about the photos. We know you've been sending them to my family. Emre's facade cracked slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed him the messages, the photos, the evidence Murat had gathered. His jaw tightened as he realized we had proof. You left me, he said suddenly, turning to Aisha. 5 years we were together. Our families had plans. Then you threw it all away for your career, and now you're marrying this foreigner? I left you because you were controlling, Aisha shot back. Because you tried to tell me what to wear, who to talk to, where to work, and now you're stalking me? The confrontation grew heated. Emre stood up, pacing the small room. Your family welcomed me. Your mother treated me like a son. Then you humiliated me by leaving. Do you know what people said? That I couldn't keep my woman in line, that I was weak. So you decided to destroy my relationship? I asked, keeping my voice calm despite my anger. He turned to me with contempt. You don't belong in our community. You're playing dress up, learning a few words, bringing some baklava, but you'll never be one of us. He's more Turkish than you'll ever be, Aisha said fiercely. He respects our culture without using it as a weapon. He learned our language to communicate, not to control. He honors our traditions without twisting them. Emre laughed bitterly. We'll see how long that lasts. When the novelty wears off, when he gets tired of pretending, you'll come running back. We left without another word. But I knew this wasn't over. Men like Emre didn't give up easily, especially when their pride was wounded. The harassment intensified. Emre began showing up at places we frequented. The Turkish restaurant where Aisha and I had our first date. The tea house where I practiced my language skills. The grocery store where I bought ingredients for Turkish dishes. Always watching from a distance, making sure we saw him. He started spreading rumors in the Turkish community. Stories about my wild past, my disrespect for tradition, my true intentions with Aisha. Some people who had been warming up to me grew cold again. Whispers followed us at community events. One evening, while teaching me to make Turkish coffee, Fatma sighed heavily. People are talking, she said quietly. Some of the families are saying we should reconsider the engagement. My heart sank. After everything we'd overcome with Zeynep, to face this again felt unbearable. But Fatma continued. I told them they're fools, that actions speak louder than gossip, but you should know what's being said. The situation escalated when Emre somehow obtained my work email and began sending messages to my colleagues. Professional-looking emails suggesting I was unreliable, that I had cultural conflicts that affected my work, that I was planning to leave the country soon. My boss called me in, confused by the strange communications. I showed him the evidence of harassment, and he was understanding, but the stress was mounting. Aisha was receiving messages too, old photos of her and Emre together, reminders of their past relationship, suggestions that they were meant to be. We decided to take action. With Murat's help, we documented everything. Every sighting, every message, every rumor traced back to its source. We built a comprehensive file of Emre's harassment campaign, but Emre was clever. He never directly threatened us, never crossed legal lines. Everything could be explained away as coincidence or misunderstanding. The police said without direct threats, there was little they could do. The breaking point came during a large family gathering at a banquet hall. It was a celebration for one of Aisha's cousins' graduations. The entire extended family was there, along with many family friends. I was in the middle of a conversation with some uncles about Turkish football when Emre walked in. He wasn't invited, but he acted like he belonged, greeting people warmly, shaking hands, kissing cheeks. Many remembered him fondly from when he dated Aisha. He worked the room like a politician, and I watched Aisha's face pale as he approached our table. Fatma Ann, he said warmly, using the familiar term for mother. You look wonderful. I've missed your cooking. Fatma shifted uncomfortably. Emre, this is a private family event. Am I not family? He asked, his voice carrying just enough hurt to make people notice. After all those years, I just wanted to pay my respects. He turned to the graduation boy, pulling out an envelope. For your future, he said generously, handing over what was clearly a substantial gift. The gesture was calculated, making him look gracious while putting us in an awkward position. Throughout the evening, he worked to undermine me subtly. When I spoke Turkish, he would correct my pronunciation with false concern. When I helped serve tea, he mentioned how he used to do it properly. When younger relatives talked to me, he would interrupt with stories about his own experiences with their families. Aisha was seething. I could see her hands clenched under the table, but causing a scene would only play into his hands, make us look like the aggressors. So we endured. As the evening wore on, Emre grew bolder. During a quiet moment, he approached our table directly. You know, he said conversationally, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I've been thinking about moving back to the neighborhood, maybe opening a business, Turkish cultural center, something to preserve our traditions properly. The implication was clear. He intended to to become a permanent fixture in our lives. That's when Elif surprised everyone. Quiet, sweet Elif stood up and faced him. Emre, do you remember when you dated my sister? She asked innocently. He smiled, thinking she was an ally. Of course, good times. Do you remember the bruises? She continued, her voice still sweet, but now carrying steel. The ones she covered with makeup? The time she cried after your fights? The way you grabbed her arm at my birthday party when she talked to her male colleague? The room had gone quiet. Emre's face flushed. That's not, you're misremembering. I have photos, Elif said simply. I was young, but I wasn't stupid. I documented everything because I was scared for my sister. Should I show everyone? Aisha stared at her sister in shock. She'd never told her family about that aspect of their relationship. Too ashamed, too proud. But Elif had known, had watched, had prepared. Emre looked around the room, seeing the shifting expressions, the warmth he'd cultivated evaporating as people reassessed their memories. This is ridiculous, he blustered. I'm being slandered. Zainab stood up next. I believe Elif, she said firmly. I remember things too. Things I dismissed at the time. The way Aisha changed when you were together. The way she became quieter, more careful. One by one, family members began speaking up. Small things they'd noticed but never connected. The controlling behavior disguised as tradition. The jealousy masked as protection. The manipulation presented as love. Emre's carefully constructed image crumbled. He turned to Fatma desperately. You know me. You wanted us to marry. Tell them this isn't true. Fatma stood slowly, her face grave. I wanted my daughter to marry a good Turkish man, she said quietly. I was blinded by your manners, your family name, your traditions. But a man who hurts women is not a good man, Turkish or otherwise. She turned to me. This one, she said, pointing at me, has shown more genuine respect in 1 year than you showed in 5. He learned our language to understand us, not to control us. He follows our customs out of love, not manipulation. That is the difference. Emre left in disgrace, his reputation in the community shattered. But I knew he wouldn't give up easily. Wounded pride was dangerous, especially in someone who'd shown violent tendencies. The next few weeks were tense. Emre's harassment became less subtle. Dead flowers left on Aisha's car. Anonymous calls to my workplace making false complaints. One morning, I found my car tires slashed, though we couldn't prove it was him. We varied our routines, stayed vigilant, documented everything. The family rallied around us, creating a protective network. Cousins escorted Aisha to her car after work. Uncles happened to be around when I left Turkish classes. Even Zainab appointed herself as a guardian, using her knowledge of manipulation to anticipate Emre's moves. The final straw came when Emre attempted to sabotage my job directly. He showed up at my workplace claiming to be a client, demanding to speak to my superiors about my unprofessional conduct. He had fabricated emails, created false testimonies, built an elaborate lie designed to destroy my career. But we were ready. Murat had been monitoring Emre's digital footprint, tracking his preparations. We had warned my employer, provided evidence of the harassment campaign. When Emre arrived with his false allegations, security was waiting. The confrontation in my office building's lobby was brief but decisive. Emre, faced with security and the threat of legal action, finally snapped. He lunged at me, screaming in Turkish about honor and theft and rightful places. Security restrained him as my colleagues watched in shock. His physical attack, witnessed by dozens of people and caught on security cameras, was the evidence we needed. The police finally had grounds to act. Emre was arrested, charged with assault and harassment. The Turkish community, now fully aware of his true nature, turned their backs on him completely. At the trial, Aisha testified about their past relationship, finally free to speak the truth. Elif presented her documented evidence. Family members spoke about the recent harassment. My colleagues testified about the workplace incidents. The judge issued a restraining order and mandated counseling. Emre's family, mortified by the publicity, sent him back to Germany immediately after the trial. His business connections in the Turkish community severed, his reputation destroyed. The man who had tried to use tradition as a weapon found himself exiled by the very community he claimed to protect. In the aftermath, something beautiful happened. The Turkish community that had been divided by gossip and manipulation came together. Older women approached Aisha to share their own stories of controlling relationships. Younger ones thanked her for speaking up. The conversation shifted from tradition versus modernity to respect versus control. Fatma organized a special dinner to formally welcome me into the family again. This time, there were no tests, no skepticism, no hidden agendas, just acceptance. She served me her special lamb stew, the one she only made for family. As I ate, she patted my hand. You fought for my daughter, she said simply. Not with fists, but with patience. Not with anger, but with truth. That is real strength. Zainab, who had become an unexpected ally, raised her tea glass. To family, she said in English, smiling at me. Real family, the kind you choose and fight for. The room echoed with agreement. As I looked around at these people who had become my family through trial and conflict, I realized that every challenge had been a test, not of my Turkish knowledge or cultural performance, but of my character. And somehow, with their help, I had passed. But the story wasn't quite over. There was still one more chapter to write, one more bridge to cross. Our wedding approached, and with it, the final integration of two cultures, two families, two lives into one. The hardest battles were behind us, but the most important celebration lay ahead. The wedding preparations became a battleground I never expected. 3 months before our ceremony, Fatma called a family meeting to discuss traditions. The living room filled with aunts, uncles, and cousins, all with opinions about how a proper Turkish wedding should proceed. I sat between Aisha and Elif, watching the debate unfold. The first conflict arose over the henna night. Fatma insisted on a traditional women-only celebration, while Aisha wanted something modern where I could attend. The aunts argued for hours, voices rising, tea glasses clinking aggressively on saucers. Zainab, surprisingly, defended our preference for a mixed gathering, earning sharp looks from the older generation. Then came the guest list drama. Fatma had already invited 300 people from her side alone. My parents, flying in from Ohio, had 20 names. The imbalance sparked whispers about the American family's coldness and lack of community. I spent evenings calling distant relatives I barely knew, begging them to attend just to even the numbers. The venue selection turned into another minefield. Every location Aisha and I chose got rejected for different reasons. Too modern, not enough space for dancing, no proper kitchen for Turkish food preparation, wrong neighborhood. After visiting 15 venues, we finally found one that satisfied everyone, only to discover Emre's uncle owned the catering company typically used there. That discovery led to a heated family conference. Some relatives insisted we couldn't risk any connection to Emre's family. Others argued that avoiding every business his extended family touched would be impossible. Murat researched alternative caterers, while aunts debated in the kitchen, their voices carrying through the walls. The situation worsened when we discovered someone had been calling vendors, claiming the wedding was canceled. The florist, the musician, even the imam had received anonymous calls. Each time, we had to visit in person, bringing family members as witnesses to confirm our plans. The stress showed on Aisha's face as she juggled work and constant damage control. My parents arrived 2 weeks before the wedding, eager but overwhelmed. My mother's attempts at Turkish greetings charmed Fatma initially, but cultural clashes emerged immediately. She brought pork sausages as gifts from a local farm, not knowing. She wore shoes in the house the first day. She hugged Aisha's male cousins, causing scandalized whispers. I became a full-time translator and cultural mediator. During a dinner at Fatma's house, my father asked for beer. The room went silent. I quickly explained he meant ayran, the yogurt drink, though he definitely hadn't. My mother complimented the food by saying it was almost as good as Greek food, nearly causing an international incident. The bachelor party planning revealed more divisions. My American friends Americans wanted typical activities, while Turkish tradition demanded something more family-oriented. We compromised on a dinner at a Turkish restaurant, but tensions flared when my college roommate made jokes about belly dancers. Aisha's male cousins exchanged dark looks, while I desperately changed the subject. Meanwhile, Aisha dealt with her own struggles. The traditional gold gifting ceremony became competitive, with aunts trying to outdo each other. Someone always mentioned how much more gold Emre's family would have given. Aisha bit her tongue through countless comparisons, while I watched helplessly from across the room. A week before the wedding, disaster struck. The musician called to say his van had been vandalized, his instruments destroyed. The replacement band we found played a completely different style. Then the florist reported a break-in where only our order had been tampered with. The coincidences felt too pointed to be random. Murat's investigation revealed the truth through security footage from nearby businesses. Emre's cousin, seeking revenge for his family's humiliation, had orchestrated the sabotage. The family erupted in fury, but involving police would mean delays, scandal, and exactly the kind of drama we wanted to avoid. Instead, the family network activated. Zeynep used her connections to find a better musician. Elif coordinated with young cousins to guard vendor locations. Uncles took shifts watching the venue. The Turkish community's response to the threat was swift and unified, turning our wedding into a protected event. My parents, witnessing this mobilization, finally understood the strength of Turkish family bonds. My mother stopped complaining about the guest list size. My father began learning key Turkish phrases, practicing with Fatma's coaching. The crisis had unexpectedly bridged cultural gaps. The henna night arrived with its own challenges. Aisha's hands shook as artists applied intricate designs. Traditionally, the bride cries during this ceremony, but Aisha's tears seemed too real. Later, she admitted she'd received a message that day, a photo of her and Emre from years ago with "Remember when you were happy" written across it. We traced the message to a burner phone, but the damage was done. Aisha spent the night before our wedding questioning everything. I found her at 3 a.m. in her childhood room at Fatma's house, looking through old photos. We talked until sunrise about fears, dreams, and the weight of family expectations. The wedding day dawned with controlled chaos. 500 guests required military-level coordination. My side occupied 3 tables. Aisha's filled the rest of the ballroom. The contrast was stark, but no longer embarrassing. My small family had proven their commitment through the trials we'd faced. During the ceremony, just as the imam began speaking, a commotion erupted at the back of the hall. Emre's mother had arrived uninvited, dressed in funeral black. Security moved to escort her out, but Fatma raised her hand. In a move that shocked everyone, she walked to her former friend, spoke quietly, then led her to a seat in the back. Even grief deserves witness, Fatma explained later. The woman sat silently through the ceremony, leaving immediately after. Her presence, instead of ruining the moment, somehow made our union feel more significant, more hard-won. The gold gifting ceremony became overwhelming. Relatives pinned so much jewelry on Aisha that she could barely stand. Each piece came with whispered blessings and sometimes warnings. "Don't forget your culture," one aunt murmured. "Make your husband understand our ways," said another. I watched Aisha bear the weight gracefully, understanding now what she carried for both of us. My parents' speech surprised everyone. My father had memorized a Turkish blessing, pronouncing each word carefully. My mother presented Aisha with my grandmother's pearl necklace, explaining in broken Turkish its 100-year history. Fatma wiped tears, finally seeing my family's effort to bridge worlds. The dancing began with traditional Turkish music. I'd practiced for months, but still stumbled through the steps. Relatives cheered my attempts, no longer mocking but encouraging. When American music finally played, Aisha's family watched in amazement as my reserved parents transformed into enthusiastic dancers. Near midnight, Elif pulled me aside urgently. She'd noticed someone filming guests with professional equipment, asking strange questions about our relationship. Murat investigated and discovered a blogger known for exposing fake multicultural marriages had infiltrated the wedding. We quietly had security remove him, but not before he'd gathered hours of footage. The incident reminded us that our challenges weren't over. The marriage certificate didn't end the scrutiny, the cultural negotiations, or the need to prove ourselves. But looking at Aisha laughing with my mother, watching Zeynep teach my father Turkish dance moves, seeing Fatma beam with pride, I knew we'd built something stronger than opposition. As guests began leaving, carrying plates of leftover food Fatma insisted they take, the weight of the journey hit me. From that first terrifying breakfast to this moment, every challenge had shaped us. The fake profiles, the edited recordings, the sabotage attempts, the family conflicts, all had forced us to fight for our choice. Aisha found me on the balcony, still wearing her heavy wedding dress. We stood together, watching the last guests depart. Her hand found mine, the henna now faded, but still visible. Below us, my parents helped Fatma clean up, communicating through gestures and smiles when words failed. "No regrets?" Aisha asked, leaning against my shoulder. I thought about everything we'd endured, everything still ahead. The blogger's footage would surface eventually. Emre's family's resentment wouldn't disappear. Cultural misunderstandings would continue. My Turkish would never be perfect. Her family would always compare. The challenges were real, ongoing, permanent in some ways. But so was this. Fatma calling me son as she hugged goodbye. My parents planning their next visit, determined to learn more Turkish. Elif texting me funny memes about cultural confusion. Zeynep defending us fiercely to anyone who questioned our marriage. Murat teaching me Turkish card games. The cousins accepting me not as the American who married in, but simply as family. The next morning, we found wedding gifts piled in Aisha's apartment. Among them, a carefully wrapped package with no card. Inside was a traditional Turkish coffee set, ornate and expensive. We never discovered who sent it, though Aisha suspected it was from someone who couldn't publicly support us, but wanted to acknowledge our union. That afternoon, my parents insisted on taking Fatma to an American diner before their flight. Watching her try to eat pancakes with knife and fork, while my mother demonstrated the proper syrup pouring technique, I realized integration worked both ways. Fatma left with a box of maple syrup and promises to visit Ohio. The blogger's article appeared a week later, questioning our marriage's authenticity with selectively edited footage. But the Turkish community's response surprised us. Comments flooded in defending us, sharing their own multicultural marriage stories, calling out the blogger's bias. Zeynep led the charge, her social media skills finally used for good. We settled into married life with its unique rhythms. Sunday breakfasts at Fatma's continued, but now my parents joined via video call. Turkish lessons shifted from survival to nuance. Family gatherings became less about proving myself and more about simply being present. The integration was messy, imperfect, but real. 3 months later, at Elif's university graduation, I gave a speech in Turkish. Not perfect, accent still noticeable, but fluent enough to express pride in my sister-in-law's achievements. The family cheered, not for my language skills, but for the sentiment behind them. That's when I knew we'd moved beyond performance to genuine belonging.